Hello, everybody. Welcome to our program today. Another journey into urgency-based selling. Today's theme is, why do salespeople fail? So this is my experience from 30 years of sales training and consulting. The single biggest factor in sales success is how we manage the divide between social selling and business selling. A social seller wants to be liked and wants to make friends, which is a good thing. A business seller wants to earn the right to profitable business. For social selling, we use as our metaphor Dale Carnegie's Friends and Influence People. For business selling, we use as our metaphor, in a downturn, provoke your customer from the Harvard Business Review. Now, the paradigm shift for many people and many companies is there's an and, not an or. Too many people see it as an or. And in general, the emphasis in to be on social selling, as in form a social relationship. And when this happens, when social selling dominates and business selling is very diminished, the outcome is we don't open new accounts through new customers, little business development. And that's why one of our sayings is bold vision, bold behavior. Bold vision, bold behavior. Now, why is it that people shy away from business selling? There are some very negative stereotypes in our culture. Willie Loman in Death of a Salesman, slimy loser, cheats on his wife, commits suicide at the end. Not an inspiring model for salespeople. Here's another very popular one. Glenn Ross, always been closing, con men. So these are not inspiring images. And unfortunately, very often these are images that your buyers have in their minds. And so they look at us in a negative way. But what could be even worse is many salespeople have internalized these images, and it prevents them from doing the behaviors they need to do. So a question is, if it's true that business selling is important, trust the process here, how do we stay motivated? So you got to beware assumptions, false assumptions. Think those to be true. For instance, there's no selling that ever takes place between Christmas and New Year's. That's an example of an assumption. Now, this happens to be one of the best selling times of the year if you're working, because your competition has left the playing field, and the key decision makers, if they're working, those key decision makers level of transactions to oversee. So this is often an invalid assumption. In that week, I set 5 appointments myself, and I had one the day after New Year's, but I never would have had it if I accepted the assumption. So the challenge we face is, are there self-limiting assumptions that are holding us back? Quick check-in, and we'll come back to this. Any self-limiting assumptions? Here's a personal example of a self-limiting assumption. This playhouse comfortable 2-year-old, my granddaughter. But will it hold her brothers? We're all outside, brothers. I'm there. Will it hold the brothers? Turns out it will. And then she says to me, Appa, you come in too. Well, we know I can't possibly fit in here. Can I? Well, it turns out I can. I would have missed the front end of a lot of fun if I made the self-limiting assumption I can't fit into that playhouse. Now, it turns out in 5 minutes, the kids left, and it took me 15 minutes to get out of there with a crowbar. Now, here's an unwarranted assumption that kills sales. It's slimy, so you don't do the behaviors that you need to do. And that some people internalize this because, in effect, we are heroes. Salespeople are heroes. I use as my metaphor heroes, my source material, Campbell's Hero with a Thousand Faces. Campbell studied in hundreds of cultures over thousands of years to develop kind of like the quest or the laws of the hero. Join me now on a classic myth. It's hundreds of years ago. Remember, this is a myth. Everything's been good for generations. And then all of a sudden, a dragon, a mythical creature, moves into the neighborhood and starts killing people. And when the deaths reach a high enough KPI, the dragon KPI is high enough for deaths, the mayor, the king, the queen, the vizier gathers all the townspeople, come into the central square, and says, hey, we got to do something about this dragon. If somebody will be a champion, we'll go forward and we'll go out and fight the dragon and kill the dragon and cut off the head and bring it back. You'll get half of my kingdom and you can marry my son or daughter if you're the marrying type. That's the setup, right? So most people, if you pan in on this, most people, their heads are down, they're ashamed, they're shuffling their feet. They don't want to go. It's dangerous. One person raises their hand and says, I'll go. And they set off on the quest, and they have all kinds of adventures. They meet friends, they meet enemies, and they get tested. They get battle tested. So before they face the dragon, they're battle tested. Because they're worthy heroes, they get magical gifts like the cloak of invisibility, or the shield of invulnerability, or the sword of invincibility. So by the time they face the dragon, they're battle tested, have the climactic battle, kill the dragon, cut off the head, bring it back to civilization, get the reward. The key question in this book is, at what point of the story do they become a hero? Many people, when I ask this, say, well, it's when they come back and get the reward. But on reflection, I think you'll agree, it's when they raise the hand and they go forward into the unknown. And isn't that something we do every day in real selling when we're trying to open new accounts? We face dragons of the mind. We face buyers who are lazy, uninformed. They have closed minds, right? And it's a crazy thing because all we're trying to do is make them better off, and they don't even want to talk to us. So how do we measure heroic activity? By sales. And what precedes sales? Got to have appointments. What we try to do is we try to become a trusted advisor. And that's a heroic objective in and of itself. And isn't that something that'll get us out of bed in the morning, that you're a trusted advisor? The problem we face is the competitor, top of the hill, is already a trusted advisor. We need to roll the ball downhill. Right? We have to, they roll it downhill. We have to kick it uphill. This is why selling can be so hard. They're a trusted advisor. What we need to do is level the playing field. And this takes effort, persistence, wisdom, bold vision, bold behavior. But that's what we do. We level the playing field, we open the closed mind, and that is a heroic task. Let's look at a case history. Do or Die at the Sausage Company. Now, we sell sausage casings. I don't know if you folks know what those are. Sausage casings are pig intestines, largely, also sheep intestines. When I was given the assignment, the owner said to me, you know, Andy, we like a lot of your ideas, but what's your experience in selling pig intestines? Now, the buyer didn't want to meet us. For 6 months, the Midwest team had tried to get an appointment unsuccessfully. So I coached the salesperson. I said, listen, if this is important enough to you, you have to take a do or die approach. You got to storm the Bastille. In this case, sat in the waiting room until he got an appointment. He waited for hours. He got an appointment. And everything, and this is a good story, everything that happens in this story happens because he sat in the waiting room and he got the appointment. Now, the buyer reluctantly came down and said, okay, I'll give you an appointment, but you got to bring your very best prices. Sharpen your pencil. We're in a pennies business, pennies. Now, Steve was the salesperson. He crossed the first threshold of the hero, the world as we know it, continuity, safety. He became a hero when he sat in that office in the waiting room to get the appointment. So the owners wanted me to go along to help out. I helped them develop some of their materials. On 9/24, we met and we showed them our hard-hitting piece. This was the rough draft we had at that time. Eventually, we turned it into this, the high cost of low-price sausage casings. And the essential idea is, you buy cheap, you get cheap, and it causes the production line to come down. So that was the bold vision. And then we went through the proving kit. And here you might want to reflect on what's in your proving kit. So on the left hand of the page, and this is all we had then, we typed up what our quality process was, and we brought along a test from the lab to show that it was bacteria-free, because we have to test our product. A proving kit, very primitive, right? And then something unusual happened. John, who was in charge of production planning, printed out 4 pages of materials. And what these were every item they bought. And at the time we did it, we didn't know this. But in the history of the company, this had never been done. They'd never gotten it. It was a PIK, a payment in kind, a showing of gratitude for what we brought to the table. We learned they had a problem with sheep casings. So we asked for samples, and the buyer agreed to get them. And by the way, I found out subsequently, it took months to develop a relationship to the point where you could get samples, because we got to match them. Now, John in production said, we got to meet with somebody else, come back after lunch. So we had lunch at the company store I showed. He was going to try to get us to see Bob, the big boss. So we had lunch, we came back, we socialized, we're waiting to connect with Bob. In the meantime, the buyer went out into the plant and bought us samples of sheep casings. But you know what? We were stronger in hog casings, pig intestines. So we asked for them. He went back in the plant and got them. You usually get 0% of the requests you don't make. Well, finally, John in production got Bob on the phone. Bob couldn't see us, but he okayed John testing our product. That'd be the next step in the process. We were meant to return in 2 weeks. Now, who's Bob? He's the CEO. He's got to approve everybody. Now, didn't we get lucky that first meeting? We got samples of 5 different casings, and developing a relationship to the point of getting samples to match, that could take months. We were given their entire list of casings, and this has never happened in the history of the company, which I think was like 30 years. We were invited back to test our product. Huge PIK, payment in kind, engagement. Oh, by the way, we never gave them pricing. Even though the buyer said, a penny's business, pennies, sharpen your pencil. We didn't give them pricing. So we crossed the second threshold of the hero, payments in kind. It's the things they did to show they were committed to the process. And we never gave them a price. 2 weeks later, we had a test. They ran well, but there were some questions, so they invited us back for another test. On 10/28, they called. They asked us for some advice. They had some challenges with their hot dogs. We gave them advice. This is important. Sometimes if we're selling, they have no need to talk to us, but bringing wisdom is another matter. Now, we were deep into the process, but this is how you could start or catalyze a process, is bring wisdom. And the advice is always ask yourself, what wisdom am I bringing to this conversation? Wisdom is typically type 3 knowledge. Type 1 is what you know or the prospect knows. Type 2 is what they know they don't know. And type 3 is what they don't realize they don't know. So before every sales call, ask yourself this question. What is the wisdom that you're bringing? On 11/12, they emailed us our first purchase order. It took 6 weeks. We've shipped over $1 million of product. And why is this significant? Because the Detroit team was reporting to corporate. They were building relationships. But in 6 months, they never even had a meeting. Self-imposed limitations prevented sales. In this case, the breakthrough was sitting in the waiting room. Nothing would have happened if Steve the hero had not stormed the Bastille. So we're needed. We have to take a do or die approach. Do or die means we match the effort, the brain work, the emotions to get the results done. Best efforts? Best efforts doesn't cut the job, doesn't do the job when we're going up against entrenched competition. A do or die person is a maximizer. A best efforts is a satisficer. Do or die is a threshold level of total commitment to achieving the objective. It's preparation, extraordinary effort, intensity, creativity, bold vision, risk-taking. Now, for those of us who reasonably seek work-life balance, to some extent you can substitute brains for brawn. What does that mean? Well, if you have a network, you can get warm introductions. The magic moment of access is a great time to ask for warm introductions. What would that mean? Well, if a prospect is on the phone, if a customer's on the phone and they're telling you they love you, it's a good time to ask for warm introductions. But we still need to make enough effort so the thoughtfulness is effective. How could you begin a change to more do or die? Maybe make sure you always ask for an upsell or a warm introduction in the magic moment of access. Now, some people feel uncomfortable kind of pushing and shoving a buyer, and I wanted to tell you a quick story here. I have 2 daughters, so I've gone through this twice. Maybe you've gone through this. Your teenage daughter just gets a driver's license and says, can I borrow the family car tonight? And so you're a diligent parent. You say, tell me, honey, where are you going? With whom? She says, I don't know. I'm going on a blind date. I don't know where we're going. Okay. When are you going to get home? About 3 in the morning. You think to yourself, what? Well, what are you going to say in this case? You're probably like me, going to say, gee, honey, I think we should start with something less ambitious. Maybe, you go out till 8 or 9 at night. That's what you say. And then your daughter comes back and says, I can't believe it. You're ruining my life. I hate you forever. All the girls are getting the car. And I'm not even sure I want to go back to high school. I'm so embarrassed. What are you going to do at that moment? Are you going to give her the car? I think you're going to be a parent. You're going to do what's role appropriate. And your daughter's going to grow up and love you for being strict with her. Well, here's the thing. When the buyer says crazy things to you, like, go away, I don't want to talk to you, and your price is too high, and all those things, they're acting like the teenager in this story. And you can't give them the family car. You have to be the adult in the room and challenge their thinking. That's why social is not enough. And you also need business selling. You have to challenge the prospect's thinking. One great way to do this and to get to do or die is shared with us by Collins in Good to Great, using the window in the mirror to be a level 5 leader. A level 5 leader is competent and humble. Humble means you're coachable, like maybe you're open to some of the ideas I'm sharing. Collins says, if you want to be a great leader, use the window in the mirror properly. With success, you look outside the window and you give credit to the team. With failure, you hold the mirror up to your face and say, what could I have done differently? Have I taken a do or die approach? Now, in a dysfunctional company, with dysfunctional selling, the roles are reversed. What does that mean? Things go well, you look in the mirror, you say, wow, I'm really good. My company's good. I'm a good salesperson. Things don't go well, you look outside the window and say, who can you blame? The price wasn't right. We didn't have the inventory. So use the mirror and the window properly. Be a business seller. Don't have learned helplessness, which is the opposite of using the mirror and taking ownership. My standard, by the way, is to test at least 3 new ideas a week. A lot of them wind up in the garbage can. I only share with you the ones that I've proven out over 40 years of doing this, including 30 years of teaching. The 16-week sprint. I once had a client who hired me to work with 6 or 7 salespeople. Each of them had 3 targets where we weren't getting through. And for 16 weeks, if the move from the previous week did not lead to a breakthrough, and we were going after C-suite people, big companies, for 16 weeks we innovated a new move, handwritten note, testimonial letters, all kinds of wisdom. Bottom line, 70% success in getting breakthroughs and getting some business. Well, we know Rome wasn't built in a day, so we're almost at the end of today's presentation. Think about your takeaways, if any. What did you take away, if anything, from today? In a moment, we have a few minutes for questions, and we're going to go to questions. But before that, I thought I'd mention our next webinar is 416 Powerful Selling Tools, including the 15-minute executive briefing. For those of you folks who are trying to get through to owners, presidents, CEOs, here's a tool that you really want to look at if you're not doing it, or burnish it if you have it, because it sets up you're being able to say in an outreach, give me 15 minutes, I'll change your life. How 15 minutes can change your life. Okay, folks, we have a few minutes for questions here. You can put them in the chat. I'm monitoring the chat, and I have a question here. Let's see what the question is. I'm a relationship salesperson. I form relationships. This business selling thing sounds transactional. I don't see how this compares to building a relationship. Good question, of course. They're all good questions. There's two aspects to relationship. Social and business. Remember, social selling, business selling. What often happens is that salespeople form social relationships, but not business relationships. And as a result, they don't close business, or they don't sell what they ought to sell. So it's not a tyranny of the or, it's both. You need social and business. It's never worked for me to be pushy. I had a bad experience when I was younger, and it taught me to be more socially appropriate, to be sensitive to people. What are your thoughts about this? Well, I can see where it's hard overcoming, a bad experience. I got it. But I would call to your attention, the story of the teenage daughter who wanted to borrow the family car, and it was an inappropriate ask. It's a different context. Business and social are not the same thing. The business world includes social, but it includes something else. And if you don't include it, you're just not going to open all the accounts you can. I went into sales for the money. I suppose it's okay to be a trusted advisor, but I really want to make more money. Are you telling me money's not important? Not at all. But I am suggesting that if you look at your career from a long-term point of view, it's important to love what you do. And a great way to love what you do is to develop the brand of trusted advisor. And by the way, it'll do double duty for you, because in the first place, you'll feel really great about what you do if you're a trusted advisor. And then in the second case, it's going to help you win more profitable business and block out the competition. Do you have any other recorded content on becoming a trusted advisor faster? We have a special webinar on just becoming a trusted advisor faster. And if you're interested, please go ahead and send me an email. Let's see what happened here. Skip. Send me an email, and we'll be glad to get that over to you. So it looks like we're just about at the end here. If you want more information about our 15-minute executive briefing, my first book, Innovate Now, Applying Do or Die to Your Business, please send me an email. And with that, we're coming to the end of today's webinar. Thanks for coming today, and we look forward to hearing from you in the future. Bye-bye now. That concludes our webinar.